Hello, listeners. Been wondering how you can help the show? Probably not. But here are 5 things you can do. 1. Subscribe. Support the show by clicking the subscription link in the show notes. 2. Review on iTunes, on our website, www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com, or on whatever app you listen to. 3. Donate. When you go to our website, click the cute coffee cup icon. Or in the show notes, click the subscription link. 4. Share. Sharing really is caring. Tell your friends and even your enemies to check out the show. 5. Watch. Wait a minute, it's a podcast, not a movie. Actually, it's both. Check the show notes to find out where to watch the documentary. You can also rent it on Prime Video. That's it. Oh, one last thing. Enjoy this episode. And a 1, 2, 3, go!
Dear loyal listeners, welcome to 2023 and the 3rd season of the Afraid of Nothing podcast. My name's Emily Heskey. I'm so excited to share tonight's episode with world-famous psychic medium Echo Bodine.
Wait a second. Who the heck is Echo Bodine?
Echo Bodine is known internationally for her work as a spiritual healer and writer. She has also appeared on numerous national television shows. I predict that this show will be fantabulous.
Wow!
Happy New Year!
Squeaky horn sound effect from satflat.com.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey.
Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
Oh, we've got a fabulous guest tonight. Her name is Echo Bodine, and I know she's fabulous because I read her great new book, How to Live a Happily Ever Lifetime. And also, there's a pretty well-known person that wrote the foreword for your book, Chip Coffey. You want to tell how you met Chip, Echo?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Oh, Bob, it was a riot. Okay, so I had heard of him, of course, and he came to Minnesota to do something, and so I went to see him. Well, apparently he had read a couple of my books, and so he approached me with kind of a nervousness, which I found so funny. And he calls me Echo freaking Bodine. Okay? Echo freaking Bodine. He always yells it. And so we just became instant friends. And then my publishers, they always want you to get somebody to do a forward. And I asked him, and he's like, well, how can I turn down Echo freaking Bodine? And, and that's how it goes. That's how it went.
Yeah, and that's how he signed at the end, Echo freaking Bodine, which is, you could tell he really has a lot of admiration and love for you, which is awesome. I mean, he's a very cool character. I've never met him. I've interviewed people, but I would love to talk to him some point because he just seems to, he's only been around, I guess, for 15, 20 years, but he's accomplished so much once he went on Paranormal State. And then, man, he's just everywhere now, which is great.
He is, yes. And we're trying to figure out what we can do together. What would be a cool thing for people. So we're trying to figure that out right now. So if you have any ideas, Bob, pass them along, please.
You ever go to any Paracons? Because I see like a lot of people I know. I'm in Massachusetts, and like I'm actually like a mile from one of the most haunted houses in the United States. It's called the S.K. Pierce Victorian Mansion.
Oh my. Have I ever, you know what, when I was younger, I went to those, but it's going to sound so weird, but I just found them boring. So I don't go to them anymore. But I don't have a bad attitude about them. I just, no, that's okay. That's for people that are really excited about it and excited about ghosts. And, I'm kind of snore. Oh man, ghosts. So it, I, I've just had too many ghosts to deal with. And I'm at the point where I don't want to talk about ghosts. I mean, I do with you, but I mean, in general.
Yeah, I could certainly understand that. I've stopped going to a lot of them, but it's just a room full of a lot of people that you've seen, which is kind of cool. But also at some point you either go around, you spend money, or you talk to people. And I enjoy doing a podcast
Yeah.
more and talking to people like you tonight, to be honest with you. So I find that the most refreshing thing.
I get it. I totally get it. Yep.
Now, I told you I was going to start this conversation off with a heavy topic. In your book, you talk about the battle between the ego and the soul. And that resonated with me. And I don't think I'm like an egomaniac or even narcissistic, but I think when it's my time to go, the ego is going to be holding me back, and I just I'd love to talk to you about when you learn that and talk about really how the battle between the ego and the soul and really what the function of each is.
Maybe we should say it a different way because people get confused about the word ego. So let's say the conscious mind versus the soul, because the body was created to survive. And I mean, just turn on the news and see all these unbelievable stories of people who survived stuff that you'd never think they would survive from. So that's always the goal of our bodies is I'm going to survive. I'm going to be that one human that never dies. And then there's the soul who has a path and a plan, and it has very specific things it wants to learn and grow from, and it has a exit point in its chart, and it can when those exit points come up in our life, the soul, what we usually end up doing, Bob, is around the time of those exit points, like maybe our body gets pneumonia, okay, and so while our body is maybe in the hospital trying to breathe something to be able to breathe better, our soul is out of our body. We're on the other side. We're talking to the elders and we're saying, well, what do you think? And they're saying to the soul, yeah, what do you think? I mean, if you stayed, you'd accomplish this and this and this. If you want to come home now, you can do that also. And a lot of souls, a lot of us say, well, I've really accomplished a lot so far. I think I'll stay around. When's my next exit point? Well, when you turn 57. Oh, okay. Well, that's another 15 years. Okay, yeah, I'll stay. And then you slowly start to get better. Oh, maybe even not even slowly, but suddenly your body starts to turn around and improve. Your health does. And that's just an indication that the soul has signed on for more time. The soul, and see, let me say this too, because when we're in our dying process, okay, the soul comes out of the body a lot and evaluates things. Let's see, what do I have left to do? Should I stick around? Let me see. No, yeah, I think I will stick around. No, you know what? I feel done. And so there's a period of time in there when an exit point is coming up and a person, they start to have thoughts like, maybe I should call friends and tell them I love them. Maybe I should go make amends to so-and-so. Maybe I should sell some of these things I think are so important. We start doing little things. Our conscious mind doesn't really understand what's going on because that's how the soul wants it. I've talked to lots of souls, Bob, who, like, let's say they come to me for healing. And so I'm channeling healing to them. And the person says, when they first get here, well, would you talk to my soul and see if it's going to die, if I'm going to die, or if I'm going to survive this cancer? Okay. And so I communicate with their soul, and their soul looks just like them. Some people call them the body double. And it comes out of the body and it just stands right there, usually right by the healing table. And then I communicate with the soul telepathically. So I'm not having an out loud conversation with the soul, but I'm asking the soul, what's going on here? Are you going to survive this cancer? You know, your body, your conscious mind wants to know what's going on. And Bob, I can tell you right now, I would say 95% of the souls that I've talked to say, I'm out of here soon. Do not tell my conscious mind, because my body, my mind will get depressed, and there's more things I want to accomplish before I die. And so then I ask the soul, how do you want me to handle this? And they'll say, just tell them that I wasn't in the mood to talk today, or to tell them that you couldn't find me today. And so once in a while, I did have a situation where, and this was actually with a friend of mine that I was channeling healing to. He asked me, he said, Echo, would you talk to my soul? And the way he said it was, and reassure me that we're on the right track and I'm going to heal. So I asked his soul. He was laying on the healing table. I'm channeling healing to him. And I asked his soul, and his soul said, he said, Echo, I'm out of here in 2 weeks and I cannot wait. And I said, boy, this isn't good. And I said, well, okay, your conscious mind wants to know what's going on. He said to me, go ahead and tell my mind that I'm out of here in 2 weeks, so that he'll get everything done that I've been telling him to do. Okay. So he, my friend, got very upset with me and stopped talking to me because he said that was a terrible thing to do. I should have never told him that. I'm like, oh my God. So, and he did die 2 weeks later. Yeah. And the unfortunate thing for me, Bob, was he wasn't speaking to me. So I didn't get to say goodbye. It was just bizarre.
Yeah.
And so after that, I thought, you know what? That's the last time I'm going to tell somebody. If I know what's going on here, I'm not telling them.
I'm not going to ask you, don't worry. But I have to tell you, I never think about having someone ask my soul, because I always thought like my soul would be just as clueless as my ego or my consciousness, and just, oh, time to go. Okay. But maybe more happy, like a pet. I interviewed somebody once. He was a pet psychic. Actually, I've interviewed him several times. And he talked about how when pets leave, they just like jump across to the other side. I mean, there's no hesitation at all, like we humans have. You know, they just see a greener pasture or whatever, and they go.
Yeah, they're pretty happy about it. But a lot of them do come back and continue to live with their owner.
As spirits or ghosts?
As little spirits.
So meaning they can go back and forth whenever they want. Ghosts are binded here, right? Or tethered here to the
Yep. The earth plane, as we call it.
Now, that's the focus. I was going to ask, one of your book is actually what tethers people. So really your book is about how to live a happily ever life. And really the message is, when you're ready to go, you give examples of ghosts, not spirits, because ghosts stay kind of earthbound.
Yep.
And you provide 5 or 6 reasons, the most common reasons why they stay and what keeps them here.
Yeah.
And some of them are just really cool. And I want to go over that in a minute. But one other thing came up, the ego. You said the ego stays with ghosts, you know, when they die and they stay earthbound. Does the ego go with the soul when they go to heaven too, or do they just tend to stay with the ghost? The ego being the consciousness.
No, honey, you know what? The ego goes with the soul. It does. But once the soul gets over there, then they start looking at things a little different. But that's going to depend. If you've got a person that's got a really strong ego, they've been very controlling in their life and everything has to be done their way or the highway, death can be difficult for them because they know they're not in charge of death. They have to go with it. They have to surrender to it. And that can be really tough. I've seen some souls on the other side who are still just really angry. I've met some souls who are still very controlling, and they're trying to control their family members here. Oh, yes. Oh, it's so interesting because, you know, Bob, a lot of people think that when we die, our soul, immediately goes to the other side and they're so happy. And, that's kind of a fairy tale, really, because you just don't go from creating a life for 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years. And then, oh, I'm dead. Okay, I think I'll flip over to the other side now. We work through our stuff. And these ghosts that I have found with my brother, we do this work together. We used to, we haven't been doing ghost bustings for a while, but these ghosts are, wow, they are so stuck. I mean, you just can't even believe how stuck they can be. And they've all got their reasons and they're all stuck in ego. Wow, it's just fascinating to have conversations with these people because that's what we do. Bob, when we go into a haunted house, we just walk from room to room and we're looking for, and they look just like human beings. They look dressed in, blue jeans and a t-shirt or whatever they liked wearing the most. And we just walk up to them and say, what's your name? Give us their first name. Why are you here? And then they give us these reasons. And you can hear their ego is just struggling really to keep things the same. It just depends upon their different reasons. But yeah, our souls still have egos also. Mm-hmm.
Is the earth crowded with ghosts? Is there like a ton of, I mean, if you go into a room or a house, is it crowded? Because there's 7 billion souls, right? I mean, is it crowded with ghosts? Like a good percentage of the souls don't move on to become spirits. They stay kind of tethered here.
No, honey, most of them, I would say 80% of souls move on to the other side. So it's only like 20%. If we go into a house that has a ghost, then it has many other ghosts in there. And, it's so interesting because they'll even say to us, and we learned so many things along the way. We finally got to the point where, let's say we walk in a house and there's a ghost sitting on the couch. Okay. And now we say to them, okay, where are the rest of them? Oh, well, Charlie's up in the attic and George is down in the garage and Lucy's in the laundry room and Esther is in the kitchen. Okay, thank you. And then we just go to those rooms and find the ghosts. And Bob, now here's the strange thing to me is that they pick a room and they just stay there in that room and they don't socialize with each other. But ghosts look for houses that have ghosts in them so that they don't feel so alone.
Really? Huh, that's interesting. Wow.
And Bob, I bet you if I walked through my neighborhood, which has, I don't know how many houses, let's say maybe 15 houses, I would think 1 out of 15 might be haunted. Yeah. I mean, you can go for neighborhoods and not see any ghosts, but you can when you find a ghost.
It's a cluster. All right. Yeah. It's when I made the documentary Afraid of Nothing, one of the guys I interviewed was a psychic. And at the end, they kind of say things. And as I wrap up, and he said, my biggest fear when I die and if I become a ghost is I'm not going to like the people that I haunt a house with, that I won't like the people I'm with. And it's funny that you just mentioned that a lot of them just stay to their own areas. It's like 6 people living in a house where you're alive and you stay in your room and they stay in their room.
Yes. Speaking of that, that's one thing we have found is ghosts don't like children. And so they will try to scare the children so that the parents will move out of the house. They don't like children. And they've said to us, God, they're so noisy. I can't stand them. I just want to get them out of here. And that was a house we went to where the little kids kept telling their parents that the strange man and woman kept trying to push them down the stairs. And so the kids were afraid to come out of their room and go down the stairs. And the parents, they just didn't believe the kid. But then strange things started happening. And that's when they called us. And the kids, they didn't even have the kids there that night. They didn't want the kids to know anything was going on. But it was the ghost who told us, God, these kids drive me nuts. I just want to get them out of here. And so I said to the ghost, so you're going to just stand here and push children down the stairs? He says to me, whatever I have to do. It's like, oh my God.
What about if there's ghosts at a house? I mean, I'm sorry. What if there's child ghosts at a house, like the S.K. Pierce house in Gardner is supposed to have a couple younger souls there that died tragically from Spanish flu or drowned in a cistern or whatever. I mean,
Yep.
do children tend to stay by themselves too, or do they seek other spirits out?
Yeah, they seek other children spirits out, ghosts. Yeah, because I don't think I've ever been in a house where there's just one child's spirit. I don't. No, nothing comes to mind right now. Gosh, I'm not sure if this story was in the book or not, but there was one house where the folks would hear this bouncing ball all the time up in their attic. And so that's why they called me in, and I went and looked. And upstairs in their attic, there were 6 little children. And I mean, they were just adorable. And I mean, ghosts. And so I went over to them and I said, okay, what kids? Hi, kids. What's going on here? Oh, we like to play the ball. Okay. Well, why are you here? Well, where else should we go? Oh, so you don't know where else to go? No, no. We used to be here, and then there was a fire, and we didn't know where to go. So we just stayed here.
Mm.
And I said, did you die in the fire? Yeah. All of you? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I said, what if I call in an angel and have the angel come and get all of you? Oh, they all giggled. They thought that was so funny. They didn't think I was telling the truth. Okay. Well, afterwards, Bob, I was telling the owner about it, and he said, oh my God, there used to be an orphanage on my property and it burned down and the children died in the fire. So those little kids, I don't know why they're still there. And I just thought it was so odd. So what I did was I asked if an angel would come and take the children. And they did.
That's good, because they probably didn't even know any better, in those situations. Some people cling to their earthly environment, but they probably didn't even know any better, which is great. After you send ghosts to the afterlife, do you ever hear from them afterwards? Do the spirits ever come back, or do you ever run into them again?
You know what? Oh my God. I went to a psychic for, he was a spiritual healer also. So I went to him for a healing one day, and he said, oh my goodness, there's all these spirits here. And they're saying, tell her thank you, tell her thank you, tell her thank you. And so you know what, Bob, I didn't even think about that it would be a ghost. I was just laying there. Oh, sure. Okay, sure. And and then he started naming their names. And I thought, God, these names are so familiar to me. Why would I know that name? And then one of the spirits told the healer that they had been ghosts on Earth and that I had got them over to the other side, and they were all really grateful.
Wow. I never asked anyone that, which is great. I'm sure it's happened to other people as well, but for some reason for you, I thought that had happened.
Yeah.
When I was reading your book, it said that you discovered your psychic ability at age 17, which seems a little bit late. Were there signs that you just ignored earlier on when you were a younger girl, or
Yeah.
what triggered you at age 17 for your psychic awakening and also psychic healing?
You know what? When I was young, like young, I would know things about people, but I didn't really understand what it was. I remember sitting in 2nd grade, and I looked over at this girl in class, and I thought, oh no, she's going to be sick tomorrow. Oh, that's too bad. And I thought, should I tell the teacher? And then I thought, no, I probably shouldn't. So that's how I was throughout my childhood. Is I would just meet someone or look at someone and, oh, that's too bad. They just lost their kitty or something. But Bob, I never told anybody because nobody else talked the way that I talked in my mind. I didn't hear other people say those things. So I just kept it to myself. Plus, I was really shy when I was a little girl.
Do you have any siblings? Or I know you had a couple parents, but did you have any siblings? Or you were the oldest, you mentioned, so I guess you did, right?
Oh, Bob, I have, honey, I came from a psychic family, as it turns out.
Oh, wow.
My sister is psychic. Okay, so let me tell you the beginning, all right, because this was the crazy part. So, okay, just imagine, grew up Presbyterian, went to church every Sunday. Okay, we weren't involved in any of the psychic thing, or my grandma, she would go down and get readings from the gypsies down on the riverbanks. And that was kind of like a family secret, like, oh my God, don't tell anybody, grandma goes to the gypsies. Okay. So I'm 17 years old. I'm a senior in high school. I had 2 brothers and a sister, mom and a dad. And every night, my one brother, he would go downstairs after dinner, and he was just learning how to play the drums. So he'd be down there kind of clanking away. And Bob, all of a sudden, the nicest drum music came from the den. And we all stopped talking and looked at our dad. And he said, well, I don't know. It must be the record I bought him. And we just sat there listening to the music. And after just maybe even 15 seconds, my brother came running up the stairs and said, did you hear it? Did you hear it? Did you hear it? And we were like, yeah, what was it? He says, a white figure floated through the door, across the room, put its hands on top of my brother's hands, and played that music. And he said, I had my eyes closed and I could still see him. He said, I tried to drop my sticks and I couldn't. And then after he played that music, he moved back across the room and through the door. And so my brother was so upset. And okay, so this was 1965. And back then, you had to know somebody that had been to a psychic. It was real kind of secretive back then.
Oh, yeah.
My mom was in a prayer group, and one of the women in the prayer group had mentioned to her that she had been to a psychic. So my mom called this lady and said, okay, can you give me the number of that psychic? We just had a weird experience. And we got the lady's name and number. Her name was Mrs. Olson. That's way back when Folgers was doing all their Mrs. Olson coffee commercials. And so we thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
So we called this lady. My mom says, hello, Mrs. Olson. My name is May Bodine. Mrs. Olson says, yes, Mrs. Bodine, I've been expecting your phone call. And then she proceeds to tell Mom, she said, your son just met his guardian angel, Dr. Fitzgerald. And when he was living on Earth, in one of his lifetimes, he was a drummer. And he's going to teach your son many things. And she said, this happened for an important reason. I need to see you and your oldest daughter for a psychic reading. So my mom said pretty much, okay, I'll call you back on that, and hung up the phone and told us, and Bob, none of us felt comforted by her words. A guardian angel who plays the drums? What? And yet, by the next day, Mom and I were very curious. Why did she want to see us? And so we did call her back. We made an appointment. We went and saw her about a week later. Oh, God, you should have seen us on the drive over. We were nervous wrecks because we didn't know what do psychics do? I mean, will they know every secret we have? Just this feeling of, oh, my God, this is going to be creepy. And we got there, and she was just the sweetest lady ever. And she was from England. She had the coolest accent. And she said to me, Echo, you sit here with Mr. Olson while I give your mother a reading, and then I'll come and get you. Okay, so I go and I sit down on the couch with this man, and I am terrified. Is he reading my mind? Does he know me? Does he, what am I? Oh my God, I just sat there like a statue. And after, I don't know, honey, maybe 10 minutes, my mom came out and she gave me this look like, oh my God. And then I went in, and she told me that I was born with all 4 of the psychic abilities, and I was born with the gift of healing. And she said a woman would be coming along that would teach me about psychic abilities. She would teach me how to develop my psychic abilities. And she said, there's not much I can tell you about the gift of healing. She said, just know that the healing energy comes from God. And remember, you always have to use white hankies under your hands when you're channeling healing. And she said, your father is at home with a migraine headache. She said, go home, take out some hankies, put them on his head, and then put your hands on top and ask God to work through you. And I said to her, I said, okay, two things. One, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no psychic abilities. And two, I don't want any of this stuff. I just want to have a nice, normal life. She said, you can have a nice, normal life in your next life. But in this life, this is what you came here to do. Mom and I were both stunned because she told Mom that she was going to be a well-known psychic someday, that my brother Michael would be a famous psychic, I would be a famous psychic, and that my sister Nikki would come into her psychic abilities in her mid-40s. And honest to God, you should have seen us, Bob, the whole way home. Why us? Why? Why do we have to do this weird stuff? Why? What are we going to tell our friends? What are we going to do? Mom, how are we going to do this? Oh, my God, blah, 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 blah.
What did your father think? Because he was kind of left out, right? It's everyone but him.
Oh, man, my dad was not happy when we got home. Oh, my God. He did not want us to go to the psychic. He was like, I don't want you guys getting involved in all this. And I had said to Mom before we went, I said, I don't really want to go, Mom. I'm so scared of all this stuff. And she said, well, let's just go once. But when we did get home, we told Dad everything that she said. He was laying in bed with a cold rag on his head for his migraine. And I said, Dad, can I take some hankies and put them on your head? And I said, she told me that I was born with the gift of healing. And he's like, oh, Jesus, whatever. So I did. And honest to God, Bob, my hands heated up like little heating pads. And I thought, what is this? And it just stayed like that. They trembled a little bit. And then it all stopped and my hands cooled off. And I took my hands off. And honestly, it maybe have been on there a whole minute. Mom was standing next to me watching everything. And my dad, he took that washcloth off his head and he said, well, I'll be damned if my headache isn't gone. And I was just like, oh my God. Honey, it was about 6 weeks later. And Mrs. Olson had told us this, that a woman would come into our lives that would teach us how to develop our abilities. And
Was that Bertie?
Yes.
Was that Bert?
Yeah.
Okay, the person you were, yeah.
Yep, it was Bertie. And she showed up and we went to her house. And the night that she explained what psychic abilities were, it's like the light bulb went on in my head. And I thought, wait a minute, I wonder if that's why I would know when someone was sick or why my hands would heat up from time to time. So we ended up going back every week and we did develop our psychic abilities. Yep, there's the story.
So it's a family story, which is crazy. I never heard that, like the whole family coming out at the same time or pretty much at the same time. And then finding a mentor like that can actually help you. A lot of times people, when they're psychic that I've interviewed, they had to stumble and fall down and figure stuff out for themselves until much later in life.
I know. You know, Bob, when after Mom and I saw that psychic and Mrs. Olson, she told us we were going to be famous psychics someday. Mom and I were like, well, okay, let's see. What do we do? Oh, I think we have to buy some incense because I think psychics always have incense. And then we thought, oh, yeah, we better get a Ouija board, too, because, I mean, if we're going to be talking to spirits, how do you do it? And, oh, God, Bob, honestly, we did not know what we were doing. But if I would have known everything that was going to happen, I would have tried to fight it. And I did fight it for a long time. I went on to college. I had other jobs. I was like, no, I'm not going to tell people that I have this. And it took me about 12 years, but I finally, so many things happened to kind of push me in the direction of it's time to do this. So I tried to put it off as long as I could.
Yeah, it's funny how life does that. On a totally something different, I had felt around this time last year that I should look for another job. But I didn't. I'm an older worker. I've been at this place like 12 years. And then in June, I get on my weekly call with my boss, and there's a third person, HR, and totally threw me for a loop that I was laid off. And it basically, I'd worked from home. It was like, shut your computer off, and then all connection to anybody and anything with the company was gone.
Wow.
My whole summer was spent looking for another job, which I did get. But I had known, and I resisted. And I even said to the universe, I said, when it's time, that's fine. I don't mind getting a new job. I just want to be able to leverage the benefits that I have since I've worked there for so long and land into something better. And I did,
Yeah.
but I have to tell you, the first 3 weeks where I was unemployed, divorced guy, I was facing 3 mortgages. It was my mortgage, it was child support, and then Cobra Healthcare, and I was just a wreck.
Oh my.
And then I talked to one of my psychic medium friends, who's also a healer. Her name is Ruthie Larkin. She's called the Beantown Medium.
Okay.
And she gave me a lot of guidance about angels and prayers and all that stuff. It really helped. It took a couple weeks to get it into my head, but
Yeah.
things worked out, unfolded, and actually I found out I was much more valuable than I thought, even at this stage in life in the job market. So it is weird how things unfold and you're pushed. Fate pushes you in certain areas that you may resist.
I know. That's why, I think in a lot of ways the pandemic was good for us because it got a lot of people out of jobs that they weren't even happy in. And people had to stop and evaluate where they're going. Are they happy? Are they unhappy? I know those major life changes can be so scary.
Yeah.
Glad you found something. Do you love it?
No, I'm never going to love a job. What I love doing is I like the creative aspect of stuff. So I like doing podcasts and I like feeding my brain and doing some creative stuff. Work kind of gets me there and helps me meet my obligations. So it's fine. But I don't think I've ever found a job that I love that I wanted to do. I'd rather do other stuff, to be honest with you. Speaking of something that you love, you made a book, which probably it took you a while to get out of you. And this book reminded me, one of the guests on my show was the priest who sees stuck souls in his sleep. It's a priest called Father Nathan Castle, and he would give up his consciousness, he'd say a prayer, and he would have a dream, and people would come to him, and he would get up, he'd write it down, and then he would do a session, reconnect with them with a group of trusted friends and help cross them over, But he would see stuck souls in his dreams, and he would wake up. Yeah, it was a great episode, and he's pretty well known too. And so when you wrote this book, How to Live a Happily Ever Afterlife,
Yeah.
it really is about, it's helping living people be ready to move on.
Yeah.
But you really spend a lot of the book talking about why people, when they pass, why they get stuck.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if you could talk about the 6 main reasons. And there was a 7th reason that was, random ones, less common.
Oh.
One of them I totally got. And one of those random reasons why people don't move over is because they think they're going to be playing a harp or praying the whole time on their knees in the afterlife, which I could see people thinking that.
That's right. In the book I talk about, I went to a high school that was haunted, and oh my God, there were, I asked this young man, okay, so I found a ghost in the hallway, and I asked him what his name was. I think he said Raymond. And I said, how many of there are you? And he said, 35. I said, 35 ghosts in this school? And he said, yeah. And I said, why don't you guys go on to the other side? And he said, well, because we just get over there, we have to play a harp, we get our wings, it's going to be really boring.
Yeah.
And I said, oh my God. And he said, no more parties. And he said, this way, if we stay here, we get to go to parties. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the more common ones too. You said, which was addictions. Could be alcohol, could be smoking, could be food, could be sex. And you gave some great stories. I won't give them away in the book. But, one of the 6 main reasons was people didn't want to give up their earthly desires and they didn't think they'd have that going on to the other side.
Yes.
And another one was about they were afraid to go over and meet God because they didn't want to get yelled at for the life they had or something like that.
Yeah.
And they all kind of made sense once I was reading the book and I went from, 1 through 6 and then the other ones, but it was really kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that at a high level without giving away the book. And then I want to talk about how you closed the book, which was really from guidance from, I think, your spirit guide that helped you write the ending of the book where you tied it all together.
I would say the second most common, okay, so the first most common reason is they say to us, I did some bad things in my life and I'm afraid I'm going to get sent to hell. And they've said to us, well, God doesn't know where I am. God can't find me. So I've said to these ghosts, really, you're just going to hang out in this tanning parlor till eternity?
Yep.
And they're like, yep. It's like, oh my God. Okay, so that's the main reason we've heard from these guides is they're afraid of God. The second most common is, well, my wife is over there. My ex-husband is over there. I never want to run into my parents again. So there's somebody in heaven that has died and they don't want to ever see them again. Okay. So what we do is tell them heaven is a really big place. That's like going to Earth and saying, I don't want to run into Aunt Lucy. It's like, do you know that there's how many people? 7 billion people on Earth. The chances of you running into Aunt Lucy are really small. But then we tell them that there are greeters. We've seen greeters on the other side who greet people when they come home.
Yep.
And we've told them, just tell the greeter, you don't want to see Aunt Lucy. And you don't have to. It's like, really? Oh, okay.
Well, another one was that they don't know they're dead. That's what the priest deals with a lot. At times, people don't realize that they're dead. They need convincing that they
I know,
died.
isn't that just so interesting? So, what makes me wonder is, okay, do they really know that they're dead, but they're just really seriously in denial? Is that what's going on here? But because I remember the one that really struck me the most, his name was Kenneth. It was in the 90s somewhere. And when I asked Kenneth, why are you here? He said, I came back from Vietnam and that bitch is living in my house. And I thought, what? You came back from Vietnam? And I said, okay. And then my guide, it was my spirit guide that said, he doesn't know he's deceased. You're going to have to convince him. And I just stood there. I thought, what? He doesn't know he's dead. So I said to him, okay, Kenneth, what year do you think this is? I think he said something like 1968. I said, no, this is 1992. And he said, what? No, it's not. And I said, Kenneth, look at yourself. Because, Bob, that's the other thing is that whenever we see these ghosts, they always look fine. They don't look like they did in that one movie. I can't remember what movie that was. Was it The Sixth Sense, maybe? Where they looked awful. But these ghosts, they always look normal to us. But Kenneth had on a military uniform, and he had a big hole blown right through the middle of him. And he looked, it was just gross. And I said to him, Kenneth, look down at yourself. Look at yourself. And so he looks down, and I said, can you see that hole in you? And he just looked at me really confused. And I said, Kenneth, it looks like you died in Vietnam. No, I did not. And he just, oh my God, he was furious with me. And that went on for a very long time. He kept leaving the room and coming back and pretending that that was the first time he had seen me. And oh God, it took a long time to get rid of Kenneth.
Have you run into many that didn't like change? I thought that was it was such a simple thing. What? They don't like change. They're very comfortable. They're creatures of habit, and they don't want to go on and try something else. Is that much more common for you?
Yes. They're like, no, I'm not leaving my home. Everything has to be the same. It's just amazing to me. And, we've met ghosts where, like a house will go up for sale and all kinds of things start happening around that house. And then we get a phone call from the homeowner saying, okay, or actually it's usually the realtor that calls us and says, hey, would you come and look at this house? There wasn't anything happening. And now all kinds of things are happening. And people are afraid to go in and look at the house. People get up to the front door and say, it looks charming, but I don't want to go in there. And so a lot of times we've met ghosts who have inhabited that house for a long time, and they do not like change. Mm-hmm. And they don't want anybody else to live in that house other than the people that are there already. Yeah, that definitely happens. Yeah.
Now, I told you I was going to bring up questions I always wanted to ask.
Yes.
Do you consider yourself a psychic medium? What would you call yourself, Echo?
Kind of all of the above.
Because you have all four, right? You said there were four types of psychic abilities. What are they?
Clairvoyance is the gift of seeing. Mm-hmm. Clairaudience is the gift of hearing. Clairgustance is the gift of smell. And clairsentience is the gift of sensing, where our body senses things about people. That's the four clairs.
That'll help you a lot in the medical healing aspect, I would
Yes,
imagine.
it does. Yes.
I'm going to ask a couple quick questions, see what you think about this, okay?
Okay.
On almost 90 shows, I've had different people have different feelings about this. Demons. What are your thoughts about demons? Do they exist or are they just overblown?
I personally think they're overblown because we have never, in 35 years of doing ghost busting, we've never met a demon. I think I've met some really angry ghosts, some really negative ghosts. I've met ghosts that try to hurt people. I've had 3 different ghosts try to push me downstairs. I had one ghost slap me on the back of my head, which completely blew my mind that they could do that.
Mm,
Never have I met a demon. And I just find it curious, again, when these other psychics were warned.
sure. Ed and Lorraine
Yes.
Warren.
And their whole deal was that they dealt with demons.
Yeah.
We've just never been in that position where we met a demon. But one thing I can say about them is that the way that we are in life is the way that we're going to be in death. And so if a person is demonic, but then you have to try to define demons. But if a person is demonic in life, then yes, they're going to be demonic in death. But I've just never met anyone like that. Let me just say that.
Mm.
Again, I've been limited to Minnesota ghosts and Wisconsin ghosts. And, I've met a few out on the West Coast and the East Coast. But I guess what I'm saying is I haven't met every ghost that's out there, and I've been fortunate enough not to run into the demons.
Yeah, some people vibrate on a higher level. They just don't even want to. I mean, I've talked to some people where they say in the afterlife, there is no negativity. It's just love, all good stuff.
No.
And other people are the contrary. They feel that a lot of the things they run into here on Earth are demonic presences. So I have a hard time wrestling with that, and because it's all over the map when I talk to people.
Yeah.
Here's a simpler question.
Okay.
Does it matter what type of cemetery or where you're buried if you go to the afterlife?
Not sure if you guys heard that, but underneath me was a weird type of ambient noise that came from Echo's recording, and I'm going to play it and then I'm going to amplify it.
Does it matter what type of cemetery?
Okay, now I'm going to isolate that sound and amplify it and let you listen to it twice in a row. Okay, so your guess is as good as mine. I don't know what that says, but if anyone can figure it out, you can send me an email via my website, afraidofnothingpodcast.com. Would love to hear what you guys heard. Now back to the interview.
Is where you're buried. Do you need to be buried next to your wife or with your family? Does it matter at all?
No, honey, it doesn't matter. Even as I say that, maybe it would be more calming for the soul if their physical body was buried next to their spouse or their family. But I've never heard a soul say anything about, oh, I hate where I'm buried, or, they try to shed that connection.
I guess it depends on the person, right, and what they kind of value.
I think that's the better answer. Is it depends upon them. And some souls, I know my boyfriend, I mean, he is very, very focused. We're complete opposites. So he's very focused on where he's going to be buried, and he wants to be buried next to his wife who died 8 years ago. And I think, really? I mean, it doesn't even matter to me what they do with the physical body. So I guess that will give him peace of mind, knowing that that's where he's going to be buried, I guess.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's kind of a nervous thing. I'm claustrophobic, and so it's like thought of being buried. And I wonder in past life if I was buried alive, but being buried in a coffin, or the other option is cremated, which doesn't seem that fun either.
I know.
How would you go if you mind me asking? If you went, what would you do? How would you like to go?
It's interesting that you asked me because I'm like you in the whole cremation thing. It's like, no, don't burn my body. And it sounds terrible to me. And so, yeah, I was probably burned alive. I don't know, but I just think, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't. No. But then I think, Well, do I want them to bury my body in the ground? No. And so, the one I've settled on in the last few months is, have you heard of these trees where they have all these roots? Okay, so yeah, it's all these roots for a tree, and then they take your ashes. So I guess you have to get cremated, and they put them in with this big ball of tree roots, and then they plant it somewhere. So then it's like you grow up with the tree, or
Yeah.
you nourish the tree. So that's where I'm at recently, but that can always change.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't want to be cremated. I hate that thought.
Yeah, I don't like that either. How do you feel about reincarnation? Do you think, because that remember that priest I told you about, he felt there was only one life and that was it. But other people believe there's. I've talked to spiritualists. I went down to
Lilydale?
Lilydale, yes. I've been there. And when I went there, I actually interviewed a bunch of people and I did 3 episodes on it. And half the people there, depending on who you talk to, believe in reincarnation for spiritualists, and the other half don't. So it's totally almost an individual thing.
Oh my God. I can't imagine not believing in it just because I've done so many readings for people. And I must say, when all this started, I didn't believe in reincarnation. I just thought that's what hippies believed. And then when I started doing readings for people, I started seeing times in history where they had a different role, and it would explain the problem that they're having with their current spouse or something. And I mean, Bob, after a while, there was no way I could deny it, even as bad as I wanted to, because I don't even want to think about coming back.
Yeah.
I couldn't deny it. And I can't, and I've since done past life regressions myself and have seen some of the past lives. And it's really helped me to understand some of the relationships that I've had in this lifetime. So I highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm. And did you like people in your past lives more than your current self, or are you very happy with who you are right now?
Oh, that's a good question. It was interesting to observe myself. In this one life, I was a man and I was a pig farmer, and I wasn't a very happy man. And I was married to a woman I didn't really like, but I married her because I wanted somebody to cook for me and do my laundry. And so I ended up being married to her in this lifetime, and he was a man in this lifetime, and it was spooky how much our relationship was exactly like it was in that last life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh God! So sometimes you just relive it.
Yeah.
One thing I read in your book near the end, I thought, and it triggered a thought I've had on and off for a while. I've always wondered if the afterlife is what you believe it is or fear it is. So, for example, an atheist, if he thinks there's nothing, he sees nothingness, and then he has to come out of that somehow.
Yeah.
Or if you think it's, XYZ version of heaven, that's what you get. Almost like if you go to different parts of the earth, there's different ways that people live their cultures. That's the way heaven could be, but it's really based on your consciousness and what you believe.
Yes, yeah.
What is your thought on that?
I agree with you. I think it's based on our beliefs. And this is a good example of where ego would come in here, because some of these ghosts that I've met who do not believe in life after death, and we explain to them, oh my goodness, heaven is just amazing. You have to go there. It's really cool. And they're like, no, I'm not going. No, it's not real. You're making this up. Some of them have even said to us, are you trying to recruit people for Satan? It's like, Satan? No, we don't work for Satan. We're just trying to set you free. And no, there's no such thing as life after death. I mean, they're so determined to be right that they end up staying stuck. But I've been very curious about that question for a long time. And so I've done a lot of investigating, so to speak. And there's a book called 90 Minutes in Heaven that was written by I can't remember what kind of minister he was, but he had a near-death experience. He went on to the other side, and he wrote in his book that he saw that what we do in heaven all day is sing praises to the Lord. When I read that, that just infuriated me, because now all of these people, all of his parishioners, all the people that read that book, they think that's what heaven is all about. And what I say to that always is God is not an egomaniac and does not insist that we sing praises to the Lord all day. But that's what this guy's expectations were. That's what his beliefs were. And so that's what he saw.
Mm.
Now, a friend of mine, her husband, he absolutely did not believe in life after death. And he died and he got over to the other side and he told her, he said, I'm just shocked. I was just shocked when I got here. This place is a lot like Earth. And he said, it's really cool over here. And he said, I wish I would have believed in this because I was so afraid of death. He said, it's nothing like what I expected.
So that's interesting. That's like the opposite. If it's not what you expected, that kind of goes against my thought of it's what you believe it is, So that's interesting.
I know. And I've met other people whose children have died and they've come back and said the same thing. Oh my God, heaven is so cool. I love it here. And it's just interesting to me to hear the different perspectives over there.
Yeah, the person I interviewed before you did, his name is Peter Panagore, and he had a near-death experience where he died on an ice climbing accident. And he goes into great detail about it. It happened 4 decades ago. It took him a long time. He changed his life, he became a reverend, but he did it mostly so he could figure out what the heck happened to him, and then he finally wrote a book.
And we have another voice underneath my question. This one sounds like it says hello. So I'll play it and see what you think.
But he did it mostly so he could
There's actually a third one earlier too, which I did not include because I couldn't quite make out what it said. But this one was a little bit clearer, and it definitely didn't sound like it came from Echo. So, 2 voices, or they're 1 voices that's interjected a couple times during this podcast. Wow.
And he actually had a second near-death experience, but his story is being made it was a book called Heaven is Beautiful. They're making a movie out of it now too, but his experience was different than other people's, and actually the producer that reached out to him to make the movie had a similar experience. So she was perfect to.
And yet another one.
To him to make the movie had a similar experience.
Does it say, and I was lost and loved? Not quite sure. Anyways, back to the episode.
But I asked him, I said, so no family or dead relatives came to greet you? Nope, none of that. He said, didn't matter. It was just oneness with with God and in the spirit. He was so eloquent in how he explained it. I'm not trying to drive up numbers on my podcast, but if you get a chance, listen to it. You might find it interesting what he thought.
Tell me his name again.
His name is Peter Panagore, Panagore. My most recent episode is called Afraid of an Icy NDE, Heaven is Beautiful. So
Okay,
it's it's really good. So last question, would you consider yourself more religious or spiritual? Spiritual. And what's the difference?
Well, to me, is a bunch of stories passed down from, oh God, geez, simple question, Bob.
Well, let me help you. Let me see what you think if this is right. Religion is what you've been told. Spirituality is what you feel.
Thank you.
Does that work?
Yes. To me, spirituality is like having a real cool, fun relationship with God. And religion is just, it's all based on the Bible or whatever religion. And it's other people's stories, other people's beliefs. And people don't branch out and go in search of what spirituality is. They stay stuck in their religion because, their parents did, their grandparents did. This is what you do. But, it's interesting too, Bob, because the people that come to me for classes or read my book or listen to my podcast, they're people who have lost someone and they are now in a process of trying to figure everything out. Religion is no longer making them feel better. And so now they are going to psychics, they're going to healers, astrologers, numerology. They're trying to figure out the bigger picture and why all of this is happening. And it's too bad that that's what brings people to spirituality, but that's what brings them to spirituality in my book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your book, or at least your latest book, helps with that. So your website is www.echobodine, ECHOBODINE.com.
Yes.
And that's one of the places you can get this book and other books. But what else can they find at your website? Can they you mentioned that you do courses or classes, virtual, live, or what can they find when they go to your website?
You know, honey, they'll find out about classes. I've got actually, I'm starting a brand new psychic development class on Zoom in, let's see, January 5th is the date. And it's 10 weeks long and it's $35 a week. And I teach them the same things that my teacher taught us. And I will definitely help them very much to develop their psychic abilities, understand what they've got going on. And there's other things. I have other classes going on too. Everything's going on Zoom right now, which I really like.
Yeah. You have another book lined up?
I'm working on a book right now, Bob. So it's a book for parents who have gifted children. So, like in each chapter, the first half of the chapter is going to be for the parents. This is what your child has. This is what it's like for them. This is how you can help them with them. Then the second half of the chapter is going to be for the child going through the experience and help them understand this is what you're experiencing and teach them little ways to feel safe and protected. And I'm just excited about it.
Yeah, it sounds like a great book. I have an autistic daughter of 14, and she's had some funky stuff happen, when she was young. I actually have a video on YouTube called "The Ghost in Emily's Crib." It's something we captured. It was like,
Yes.
it's called "The Ghost in Emily's Crib." It's on YouTube,
Okay.
and but it's like 10 years ago. Believe it or not, didn't have a good iPhone, so it was on a baby monitor and on a lousy video camera. I captured this weird type of spidery, sinewy thing traipsing over her crib while she slept. And yeah, and my ex-wife had seen it, and it was at different times of the day. It went for like 2 weeks straight until we finally got a different bed and moved her out of that one to another one. But some people were like, "Oh, nice cobweb." But this would happen in the morning, in the night. It would happen if we moved to the bed around. Same thing. And finally, I had like half listened to my ex-wife, and finally said, "You know what?" She was out. I said, "I'm watching the monitor," and I saw it, and it was there for like a half an hour. And finally took out a camera, and I videotaped it, and then posted it. And it was actually picked up by a couple paranormal shows. Funny. She had a crazy experience with a shaman too. So she's this really beautiful, nice, low-key autistic child named Emily. Really smart, but a little bit sneaky. But she seems to know a lot more than she lets on.
I get it. Well, and let me suggest to you, there's a show many years ago called Paranormal Borderline, and they came in and did a story on our whole family. So
Really?
yeah.
Oh.
So if you get a chance, check it out, and then you can see Michael and my sister Nikki and my mom, and
Oh, I'd love to.
they did a really nice job. Really nice.
Yeah, it's nice when they do a good job, because that's always the wild card when they come in and do a story with you. So,
And yet another one. Like I said, there have been a couple I haven't put in. This one says, "I know," which is something you might think that Echo would say, but doesn't seem like her, and doesn't seem like she was far away from the mic and said it. So this one sounds like "I know," and it said it twice.
yeah, it's nice when they do a good job, because that's always the wild card when they come in and do a story with you. So,
So, spooky spooks, extra voice on Echo's sound wave, or nothing? Just something I'm imagining. I don't know. Well, you have a couple options that you heard, so a little extra hors d'oeuvre to this podcast.
well, that's excellent. Echo, thank you so much for your time today. I really encourage people to check out your website. That's www.echobodine.com. Take your class that's coming up to learn how to navigate and attune to their psychic abilities. And most importantly, buy your book, How to Live a Happily Ever Afterlife, Stories of Trapped Souls and How Not to Become One. It's a really quick, breezy read. It's well done, it's well written, and it's very easy to get through. And it's very informative, and it inspired me to ask several of the questions I asked tonight. So thank you for sending this to me, and I encourage everyone to pick it up.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you, Bob.
Well, you're Echo freaking Bodine to me now too. So
Don't forget that either, Bob.
I won't. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, honey. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode. And the world will know how swell you are.